In today's video we are going to take a closer look at some knives, well 3 of them, made by Russian knife maker Wolfage. There aren't many videos of this knife maker and their knives on YouTube, especially not in English. I think this will be the first video in English showcasing some of Wolfage's knives. And I will say that this is a relatively new knife maker to me. I've known about him for perhaps a year or two, and to be honest, in the beginning they really didn't speak to me. I thought their designs were a bit, extremely over the top, to be completely honest, with some semi-strange multi-layer etching and engravings and stuff that I wasn't really attracted to it, to be completely honest. But in time they came out with more knives, more models, more one-offs, some more impressive to me multi-level etching, or multi-layer etching I should say, and also working with some steel types that I really do appreciate. I will say that the knives here on the table, I don't have the full model names, and to be completely honest, most of the knives made by Wolfage are, I would say, custom / one-offs or semi-one-offs. There are some models that are kind of reoccurring, but with different steels, different unique characteristics, different handle materials, different blade steels, etchings, motifs, etc. And that is why let's take this for example. One of the knives I bought here from Lamnia, and once I bought it, it was removed from the site, and I just can't even remember what it was called. This one I know is a custom one-off, and this one is a semi-custom one-off, I'd say. Anyways, the steels that Wolfage work with range from like D2 to Niolox to PGK and M398 and some other steels in between. So there is a pretty wide variety. And as far as I know, they do not stamp or state the steel on the blade or on the knife. So you really have to look into the specifications of each knife that you buy, and try to keep those specs to remember what steel it actually is made in. Or maybe there is some hidden steel stamp somewhere that I have yet to find. So Wolfage are, I would say, mainly known for their kind of advanced engravings of the knives, but they also make some more plain models. Oh, now I remember another steel they work with, and they released a couple of knives in CPM S125V, I think it was, that were without any engravings or such, just plain, clean looks to it, which I know some people, well, myself included, most of the time, prefer. But I will say that the 3 knives I have here on my table are all knives that I truly appreciate, and I like pretty much every little detail about them. So I will also say that this knife here, and I believe this one as well, is made in PGK steel. And just to make to try to explain, because that is not the most common steel, I believe. It is made in Germany, and in terms of properties, I believe it is often compared with American CPM 3V powder steel, which is one of my absolute favorite steels for fixed blades. But doing that comparison, I mean, it's not entirely true, both in terms of composition and characteristics. But still, they do share a lot of similarities. So I'm still gonna say that CPM 3V is the closest steel we can compare it to out of the steels that I know of. Anyways, let's start by taking a look. Let's go from bottom to top here, and we can talk a little bit about the the knives and the knife and the sheath there. As you can see, they sometimes provide some leather sheath with some really nice details and pattern and texture, etc. But they also quite often come with a kydex sheath. I would say the wolf edge, they are a little bit, you know, all over the place in terms of handle materials, steels, sheaths, everything. It's kind of a mix, and it can really be a hit and miss. But these three knives were big hits for me personally. So let's start by taking a look at them. So we remove that one. We remove this one, and then we start with this. Let's start out if you can hear any, you know, rattling from the sheath, which we cannot. And while we are, you know, shaking it like that, we can also test the retention. And we are not able to shake the knife loose, and that is a good thing, definitely. After that, we can check for the actual retention level, you know, the strength of the retention. And I must say that I wish the retention was stronger than it is, but still, I mean, it's not gonna shake loose, but I definitely like a stronger retention, I'm not gonna lie. And especially if, you know, this came with a knife, so that is why it is here. Especially if it is supposed to be like a neck knife, a large neck knife, way too large for me to carry as a neck knife. But you definitely don't want the knife to fall out, which it perhaps won't, but you know, better safe than sorry, right? I'm gonna remove this paracord because I do not intend to carry the knife that way, so it doesn't, you know, I want to benefit from having the paracord here. If we switch the side of the sheath here to the back side, we see the belt carrying system of sorts, and we can see that it's actually made of the same kydex material as the sheath, and it is a sort of a clip design. Very different. I've never seen this one before. You know, not really certain what I think about it. I haven't tried it. I mean, it should stay on your belt, but it might be a bit loose perhaps. I'm not really sure, and I'm not really sold just looking at it like this, but I should probably give it, you know, a go before really saying if it's good or bad. But overall, I do feel like, you know, it is a pretty, you know, pretty good, pretty decent kydex sheath overall, I would say. If I could only change one thing, it would be, you know, slightly stronger retention, and that's probably it. So looking at the knife itself here, yeah, this is not your typical plain Jane, right? That we can tell right away. So the handle material should be, well, I'm not actually 100% sure. I think it is black G10, but it could be some type of black micarta as well. But I'm gonna go with G10 for now at least. We have a wolf edge pin here in the middle. We have hollow pins here, and a additional hollow pin working as a lanyard hole, I would say. Yeah, I have size 10 in gloves. I have fairly large hands. Placing the knife in my hand would look like this. As you can see, there is a bit of a groove here, sort of a little bit of a finger groove choil. So if I utilize that, it is easily a full 4-finger grip. If I do not utilize it, it is still a 4-finger grip. I can't feel any areas that would be like, you know, hot spots or give hot spots. So it is a comfortable design holding a knife like this, or perhaps, you know, if you hold it in a reverse grip for whatever reason, you would do that. Yeah, it does feel pretty good as well. So let's see here, the specs here. I think this knife weighs or should weigh around 170 grams. The total length here from the very back part all the way to the tip should be 195 millimeters. I think, let me check here because I'm not certain, but I do believe the blade length here should be 90 millimeters and the thickness should be 5 millimeters. But that is a bit deceiving, because if we look at the blade thickness, yeah, you can see the full 5 millimeter thickness here, and then something happens and it goes to a lot thinner. So here's the thing. This side, let's call this the front and this the back. The back side of the blade has a completely flat surface. There are no, it's just smooth, flat smooth here. But if we switch side, we see that there are a bit more going on in terms of grinds here on the front side of the blade. If you see this middle part here, this line here, you could say, that is the thickest part of the front side of the blade. From this middle part, it gets thinner and thinner up here until it is a super fine swedge grind, or whatever you want to call it. Same goes here, thicker here, gets thinner down to the very sharp edge. I'm not really sure what you call this specific design, especially since we have this front part here as well, that is also, pretty thick here, thick along the line here, thins out here. Maybe this is sort of a chisel grind, perhaps you call it. I'm not really familiar with that because I don't have or own any other knives that look like this knife. It's quite different, I would say. And I would have preferred a more, conventional, grind of sorts, something like this on this side, on the other side as well. Keeping some of the, not keeping the thickness, but just grinding it a bit different, because this is this is a design that I think some people are going to be sort of concerned about, if I can put it like that. But in terms of slicing capabilities, I bet this is a wicked slicer, no doubt. And looking at etching here, we got some really nice details, patterns. Same for this side. It really is some of the best etching or engravings that I have ever seen and felt, because you can feel this ever so slightly. And I do not think it will have a great impact on its cutting capabilities or performances, that I've got to say. Oh, and in terms of the general shape here of the blade, I would say that this is a sort of a customized Warncliffe design of sorts, chisel ground perhaps. Like I said, these knives are very unique, for better or worse, I would say. But the aesthetics, they are spot on. Really spot on. So let's move on to the next knife, shall we? Here is what we have up next. Something very different from what we just took a look at. Starting with the sheath, we have now exchanged the Kydex sheath for a very special leather sheath. Green dyed leather, green thread, nicely and even sewn here. Thick leather with some really nice looking flower patterns. I'm not even sure how you make those things in the leather. I guess you use some special tools here for pressing and like engraving the leather, but leather work is not my strong suit, if I put it like that. But I can definitely, appreciate the work behind it. So a really nice leather sheath. As you can see though, there is no belt loop or anything, so you're gonna have to carry it in your pocket. Then again, it is a small knife, so it should be, able to fit in most pockets. So enough about the sheath. Let's bring out the knife itself, and let's start by taking some nice close-ups here of the engravings that we have going on here. The devil is in the details, right? And we can see that, unlike the other knife we took a look at, this one does not have, one area that is completely flattened out like that. This is more of a normal, normal knife design, I would say. And there are obviously no scales on this knife. They are not needed. One would think like, that's going to be an uncomfortable knife to work with, to hold in your hand. But it definitely is not. It's actually surprisingly comfortable in my hand. No hot spots that I can feel. The finger groove here works well with my hand. But if you have, thicker fingers than I do, or very much thinner fingers, then it could potentially be, well, not as pleasant. But I will say that this area here is, well, semi-smooth and at least. But yeah, I mean, it fits my hand well, and all I can say is that I'm happy for that, definitely. This is also one of those knives where I don't have the full specs. I mean, I could measure it, but not right now where I'm sitting. I do know that the steel used for this specific knife is D2, and well, some people here might, like D2, whereas others might not be too excited about it. But knives like this, skeleton knives like this, made by Wolfage, are offered in a wide variety of steels. But I wanted this specific one, and it was D2, so I went for it. And to be really honest here, I do have a couple of knives in D2, and it may not be the most, high-end steel, but it's still a steel that I feel I can trust, and I can, I have to maintain it a bit more than some of my other steels, but it's still, a very functional steel, and most of the time at a pretty decent price, I will say. But for the full specs, honestly I can't give you them right now. But I hope you can get a sense of the knife itself. I would say it's about like 3 millimeters perhaps in thickness, and the thickness here actually goes for the entirety of the blade. Sure, it does taper down here, coming up to a semi-fine tip actually. And length of the blade here, I'm not sure, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 centimeters. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but it is a smaller sized knife with some great looks to it. I really like this because I got this knife about the same time when my baby daughter was born, so I felt it was appropriate with this storch. So let's take a look at the final piece here. This here is sort of the crown jewel, I would say. A really special knife with an even more special sheath than the last knife we took a look at. So I'm going to remove the knife actually because it's kind of heavy, so we can view the sheath a bit more in detail. Once again we have this flower theme going on both knife and sheath. But as you can see, there is a lot of stuff going on here. There was a lot of work put into making this sheath, I would say. Sure, the backside may not be, super exciting, but the front side is where it is all about. Really sturdy, strong, thick leather. Nicely sewn, even. Really looks quite spectacular. It looks like no other sheath I have. And I do have some really nice quality sheath made by some well, in my opinion, some of the best sheath makers out there that I know of. So, the knife itself. This is gonna be a hit or miss, I think, for some people, because it is, the design is kind of strange, kind of random, right? Not something you see very often, both in terms of actual overall design, the materials used, the etching, and so on. And this giant slab of PGK is, like I said, it is most comparable to CPM 3V. So this is a quality steel, I would say. What we have here is a handle of carbon fiber. Some really nice carbon fiber. Red liners. And then we have walrus tusk, or tusks, with a slight pink finish to them. And in the center, there are the tusks here, they are engraved. You can feel this engraving here. And there's a flower engraving. And in the middle of the flower, we find a mosaic pin, dead center. Some pretty nice craftsmanship, I would say. And the walrus tusk here, it is also contoured for better grip and protection. We have a lanyard hole here, which is also a mosaic pin. Quite of a nice addition. And we also have the wolf edge pin in the center here. We got some jimping going on up here, and now I actually see, look, here we actually have the steel marking PGK WA. Somehow I missed that before, but there it is. Maybe we could have found that on the other knives as well. Let's go over the numbers on this one, shall we? Because the numbers I actually have saved this time around. So we have a full length here of 245 millimeters with a blade length of 120 millimeters. We have a blade thickness of 5.4 millimeters. This is a really, stout blade or knife. I think the weight of this knife should be around 325 grams. So there is a bit of weight to it, not gonna lie. Large hands, size 10 gloves, placing the knife like this. Fills my hand nicely. I can feel no hot spot areas. You can, go down here. Hold the knife like this, with this sort of working like a bit of a hook here. So it won't, get out of your hand. But I think it would be most, comfortable using the bolster area here, and perhaps placing your thumb like this. There is a bit of jimping going on here. I would have personally liked to see the jimping continue a bit, because when placing your thumb like this, well, you kind of miss out a bit of the jimping that's going on down here. If I place my hand lower on the blade or handle, you will, then you will place your thumb on the actual jimping. Not a big deal, to be honest, and I think the jimping brings a nice, touch to it, and you can also see that the jimping is not only the blade, but also in the walrus tusk as well. Lots of little interesting details, I would say. Not really rough jimping, kinda smooth, I've got to say. But overall, it feels really nice in your hand, or in my hand at least. The etching here, we have the, well, what should we call her? The Lady of Death, perhaps? And then we have, well, the more non-deadly lady on the other side. I know some people might find this to be a bit gimmicky, but I kind of like these slightly more unique or weird or even bizarre looking knives from time to time, especially when they are made in high quality materials like the carbon fiber, like the walrus tusk here, and the PGK/CPM 3V steel. I have a ton of knives, and right now I think it's just interesting getting my hands on some, well, more unique and different knife designs, like some of the knives here made by Wolf-Age. And this is, I would say this is the centerpiece out of the 3 knives that I currently own, made by Wolf-Age. See if we can get all the knives together here on the screen. Now this is a very, very different trio of knives. No doubt about it. We have now taken a look at each individual knife here from Wolf-Age, and they are, like I said, probably a hit or miss. Some people will think they look extraordinary or really nice with the multi-layer etching and engraving, etc. Other people will think that they are probably gimmicky or over the top. But I think that we can all agree that a knife should be sharp. It should be able to cut and slice. It is a tool after all. It can of course be just a collector's item as well, but I think that these knives should be put to the test, slicing some different types of paper and perhaps other things as well. I've never seen any knife from Wolf-Age being put to any kind of use. So it is absolutely due time to do that. So we're gonna do the regular slicing of 3 types of paper to begin with, and I will use each knife a little bit on each type of paper. And I think we're gonna go in the same order as the video was, with starting with that one, going over to this, and finishing off with that one. So that will be the order things will be done. So we're gonna start with printing paper, then we're gonna go with magazine paper, and then we're gonna go with the newspaper paper. So we start with the regular printing paper and this knife first. See? So I will say that this knife is sharp enough for cutting printing paper. Let's try the next one, which is this one. This one was actually a bit sharper, I can feel that right away. Not that the other one was, you know, dull in any way, but this one was definitely a few steps above in sharpness. Let's fold the paper a little and go with the folded paper now. So really nice sharpness to this. Then we have one knife left and we're gonna need a new printing paper. So it's time for the main event. Not really, but this is such a beast compared to the other two knives. I just hope it is as sharp as the other two. Let's see, we are visible in the camera, right? So it is, I'd say on a sharpness level, it is about, well, in between the two, or more like the first. Not quite as sharp as the skeleton knife. But I mean, definitely sharp enough. Yeah, so slicing printing paper was not a difficult task to do for any of the three knives. Let's continue with the magazine paper next. So let's go with the magazine paper and we will start with this one again. Let's see, very different kind of paper and texture compared to the printing paper. So it can definitely slice the magazine paper. Remove that page and go with the next knife. So this one should definitely have no problems whatsoever slicing the magazine paper here. Like I said, this is the sharper knife of the two, or the three. I can feel it right away when I'm slicing this magazine paper that this is actually, you know, really sharp. Yeah. So no real surprises. We already knew this one was gonna be sharp. So let's go with the large one now. The big boy I was gonna say, but it's just latest on this knife. So let's see, perhaps like that. Yeah, slicing this paper, I can feel that this one is indeed the better slicer compared to the first knife. I said, you know, that this knife is in between, but it is in fact it is sharper, or with a better blade geometry perhaps, than the first knife. You can do some additional slicing here now. Just Just want to have it in camera. Really nice cut. Yeah, so that was surprisingly nice, given the size and thickness of this blade. Let's go with the newspaper now as our finale. So here we have a piece of newspaper. It's interesting texture. So let's try to slice it up as nicely as we can. So it does actually slice better than what I would have, expected it to do, that I've got to say. But yeah, slightly better performance than I would have expected. So it will slice the newspaper, perhaps not super effortless, but it will slice the newspaper. And we go with the same type of newspaper, but this knife. This shouldn't be, that difficult. It should slice through nicely. Yeah. Really nice. So, let's see. Yeah, this was a very nice experience. Sliced the newspaper very, very good. Then we go with the final knife. And the final piece of newspaper here. Let's see. Yeah, so this is actually quite nice, I'd say. Oh. It's difficult, finding a good spot, but it will slice. It will slice just nicely, as can be seen here. But given how small these pieces are, I should have brought some more newspaper. Maybe I have actually. Give me a second here. See if I can rip another page out here. So, bonus newspaper page. Let's see. Yeah, it will slice newspaper really nicely as well, not as nicely as the small skeleton knife. So I'm gonna place this one in the middle. I'm gonna place this one on the top. and I'll place this one on the bottom part here. So all of these knives slices all the 3 types of paper, no problem getting through them. This one slices the absolute best, second best and third best. None of them are bad paper slicers. They're just on different, good levels, I'd say. Let's see if we can put up some more sharpness tests. This is what we're gonna go with next. We're gonna cut some small pieces of leather, 1 piece of leather for each knife. Starting in the same order with this one, then the sharp little skeleton knife, and then the large, heavy one of custom knife. So let's get going, shall we? Not sure what I can say about this piece of leather. Not the thickest, not the thinnest, just a piece of leather. So let's start cutting away, shall we? Should be easy to pierce through, and not that difficult to cut through either. Not a lot of resistance. Getting straight cuts. Go for some bonus cuts, perhaps. Going for some pretty fine stripes here of leather. Oh, messed up perhaps a tad there. So cutting the leather, not very difficult. Sliced it up pretty nicely. So yeah, not bad, not bad. Let's try the other one. So let's do the same. This piece of leather is perhaps slightly, well, just slightly thicker and a bit different in feel, but yeah, should act pretty much the same, I would say. So let's start cutting away, shall we? Oh, maybe I should be more in, in the view of the camera when doing this. Could be a good thing, right? So it was a bit different, altogether here with the size of the piece, so makes for some different cuts, perhaps. Did we actually cut through there? So yeah. Well, we have now cut it up quite a lot. Wasn't very difficult cutting this piece of leather either. Quite easy. Doing some small bonus cuts out here. So yeah. Nice leather cutting tool. Let's go with the final knife now. So yeah, the exact same piece of leather as the one we just worked with. Getting closer to the end now, and that was actually a bit tricky. Maybe we need to have something more to grab onto. Strange in a sense. Pierce through here. Why is that? I have no idea. Maybe the tip isn't, well, I mean the tip is fine enough because we have pierced through on all the other parts here. Anyway, so this is what this piece of leather looks like now. nicely cut up like this. Some pretty thin stripes of leather, I would say. So let's clean all the way. And then we can place the pieces that we have now cut up here. Maybe they were actually a bit different. Ah, thought they were the same. So once again, I would say that the middle knife here is one that, you know, sliced the finest, but this one actually sliced really nice as well. We could go for some really thin pieces or stripes here. This one actually did a pretty good job, and thanks to the very pointed tip here, it was easy to, you know, to pierce the leather to then cut through. So yeah, that kind of concludes the leather slicing or leather cutting segment of this video. Next up, we're gonna cut some paracord. We're gonna go in the same order, first, second, third. So let's get going right away. I think that, you know, just cutting one is not gonna be much of a, you know, let's go with one first just to see if there's any challenge. No, it's gonna be too easy. So I think it's better if we go with like a couple more, perhaps like 4. Is that gonna be a better test to go with right away? I think so. Let's go with 4 instead here to make it interesting from the get-go. Yeah, so that was not super difficult. It was actually quite easy cutting through it all using this one. So it will slice a couple of paracords with ease. Let's try the next knife up. Let's go with the same number of pieces here. Let's see. Have to save some also for the final knife. This should be sufficient, I'd say. Yeah. So we're going with 4 again. We've got a bit less blade length, but this knife is sharper on the other hand, so let's do this. Yeah, totally effortless slicing through these paracords, not posing any real challenge whatsoever. So let's go with the final knife. Now we will get some more blade length, which is a good thing. Maybe we should go with even more than 4, since, you know, I'm not going to use this paracord for anything else. So let's go with, oh, maybe this is a bit extreme perhaps, using everything. So this is perhaps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, this could be perhaps a little bit overkill in some sense, but let's go with it to make it interesting regardless. So how many did I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 cords of paracord here. Yeah, that wasn't really much of a challenge. Cut them all off. So cutting paracord, yeah, this knife, or well, all 3 of them will cut paracord nicely. I wasn't originally planning on doing that tomato test, but I think that people will appreciate it more than me shaving my leg hair, because I get too many comments about shaving leg hair. So let's do the tomato test. I only have 1 tomato for this, I don't want to waste too much. And, you know, just see how the knife performs cutting through the tomato. Because this is the one vegetable that I find to be the trickiest. So that is why we're going with it. I'm going to go in the same order as we've done for all previous segments, starting with this one. And we're going to go, you know, with all knives giving them a slice or a chance at slicing here. So let's see. Well, that was not too bad. It was actually a really nice clean slice. Let's put it there. Then we go with this one, which I think should be the best one for this, but perhaps a little bit limited by the actual cutting length. And I'm sitting in a pretty strange position to cut. I should be standing instead. Yeah, that worked quite nicely. Then we go with the big one. So I'm gonna have to stand up here now. So, slicing the tomato was actually quite easy using all three knives. We can do it like this now, for example. Really, really nice slices. I said this should be a wicked slicer, but I was getting kind of uncertain during the previous test because this one performed the least good, but it was still a good performer. So let's go with this. Yeah, very nice. And we can go with this one. It's such a beast, you know. Interestingly enough, I think that this one probably performs the best together with this one, slicing the tomato. I think this one is perhaps a little bit limited by blade length and blade shape in some sense. Let's see if we can, now we have them all sliced up like this, as can be seen. See if we can do some slices on the other side here, like this. Yeah, this one is really nice to work with, surprisingly nice. We can go with this one. With a slightly longer blade, it would have been a little bit nicer to work with in the kitchen. Now, this is getting a bit squishy, so perhaps not the best or the nicest finale for this one to come. But even so, it will get the job done. Yeah, it's getting a bit mushy. But, slicing up the tomato like this was, surprisingly nice. Definitely. Just, sinks through. Requires no, pressure really, no effort. It just, just by the weight of the knife. Let's go with this one. Yeah, this one is excellent. This one is excellent working with a tomato. Then we can go, well, we did discuss the blade length, so let's do it a favor and do like this. Yeah. Wow, that was an interesting experience. So I think that all three knives here, I think they kind of excelled during the tomato test. Some really good results. Yeah, this is, well, here you go. Very, very nice. Very nice. Glad I decided to throw in this test. I was gonna skip it, go for some leg hair shaving. This was a lot more interesting. We have now reached the final part of the video, the final thoughts and conclusion of these kind of strange, weird, but very beautiful and wicked sharp knives. So we started off doing no real unboxing, because the knives, they come like this, wrapped in some plastic, no fancy boxes or anything. But we did a overview. We talked about the different sheaths, the leather sheaths and the kydex sheath. We talked about the overall designs of the knives. We talked a little bit about the engravings. And I will say that the engravings here, just to be clear, it is both, etching and multi-layer engravings. So it is a bit more than just your typical, laser etching of sort. This is actually, it requires a certain amount of, craftsmanship to actually do these sorts of multi-layer engravings, and it's difficult to make it show here in the video, but there is a certain amount of skill involved, I would say. Anyways, after we spoke about the knives, the sheaths, the designs, the specs and all that, I decided to do some sharpness tests, because like I stated, I've never seen any knife made by Wolf-H being put to any kind of test. And I think that, the knives are well, for some they are really beautiful looking, for others they may be over the top, but I thought we could all agree on that a knife should be able to cut and slice. It should be sharp, right? Regardless of our aesthetic preferences. And all the knives were sharp. They sliced all the 3 types of paper with no issues, with these 2 being on a higher level of sharpness than this one. We also did some cutting of leather and paracord, and all knives, they excelled and did a really good job at cutting paracord and leather. The piercing tip here of this one was especially nice for cutting the leather, but they all did a really good job. After we did the cutting of paracord and leather, I had this idea to throw in a leg hair shaving segment, but I decided to scrap it because it's usually not that exciting to some people, or they think it's more, a gross segment. So I threw it out and decided to go with a tomato test instead, slicing up a tomato. And all the knives did a fantastic job at that. This one finally got some time to excel, because this one was extremely nice at cutting the tomato. Although these 2 cut just, really great as well. So everything I've put these knives through, they have done a really good job. And I think it feels great to know that they are not just it's not just about the looks, it's actually about the performance, and these knives will perform. But I will still say that with Wolf-H knives, it is a hit or miss, even for me, because they put out a lot of knives and a lot of models that are too over the top and too crazy, at least for my preferences right now. So it is sometimes a challenge to find that one knife that speaks to you, both in terms of for example handle material, or for the sheath, or for the blade steel, and then you put on the different types of etchings and engravings, and they have to speak to you as well. And one side of the blade might have some etching that you like, and the other one might not, and that might be a deal breaker, etc. So it is a bit of a jungle to find that one knife that speaks to you, and also if you want a specific grind, etc. So it's not it's a bit of a lottery, I would say, but they do make some really nice knives, and they also make knives with no engravings whatsoever, as I've seen a lot of recently. With some models, especially models in CPM S125V. I'm not sure why that steel is over represented with the plain edges, or plain, non-etched, non-engraved blades, but it is what it is right now. Anyways, I hope that you have enjoyed seeing these knives in more detail, and also being put to some work as well. They are not for everyone, but they will cut and slice just fine. That is for certain. So yeah, I think that concludes this video. It got a bit lengthier than I was aiming for, but I hope you have enjoyed the ride. Over and out.